Welcome to Ngosti Talk Shows. Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Challenges we have had to overcome in 2020.
Find your own voice.
The world has become united by the unseen, knowing there are no guarantees for tomorrow.
Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Let the world hear your voice and be filled within.
For the day has come for you to be a great leader.
The time has come to break away from the pain, distraction, experience the unthinkable.
Find your own voice. Lead from within. Over to you, Dr. Bigot. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Numsa. Have you ever have an experience in your life, and then after that experience, typically an unpleasant one, you seems to just be haunted by it, or it make you react to certain thing in quite a certain uh, unexpected manner, or much more reactive than before, which is many of us label it post-traumatic stress syndrome. And there's multiple different level of post-traumatic stress syndrome, but experience including losses, whether it's loss of a loved one, whether it's loss of a job or a marriage or anything, can actually very traumatizing to us. So the question is, what can you do such that it is not as traumatizing to you, or that you don't accidentally, this is the other thing, have you ever have somebody say you have a loss, somebody say something to you, and then now it just get you to it just make you feel horrible, even worse actually. So what can you do so you not being the persons then doing that? I'm Bridget Tan, and I'm a grief transformation specialist and life success coach. And today we'll share with you not the topic that the most fun way, the most fun topic, so to say, but it is something that living this life, particularly the world nowadays, we do the encounter losses, and we want such that you are not become even more traumatized after your loss. And we'll share that today. And please share this with everyone you know, because this world nowadays, you never know who's going through losses, and sometimes they don't share. And it's a lot easier to just say, hey, this is a really interesting video, in case you know anybody, share it, and if it's benefit them, you will be so much helpful to them.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bigot. So our topic today, as Dr. Bigot said, is psychological effect of death of a loved one. When someone dies, someone you love dies, you may experience the feelings of numbness. You may experience the feelings of anger. You may experience the feelings of guilty, anxiety. Sometimes even it can be hard that you can basically find it very, very painful to go on yourself. I have seen some families where they lose their children, and when they get the news, they just go to sleep. You hear that the mother dies or the father dies just because they've been told the news, because of the shock. Sometimes they can't go on and they can't handle the news of losing that loved ones. So we will be talking about it. I'm not a qualified coach for grief, but Dr. Bigot is. She is a qualified grief coach. So if you feel that you have any questions to ask her, please type the questions and she'll be able to answer those questions. I can answer the questions based on my own experience, but she can answer the questions based on the professional advice. So over to you, Dr. Bigot, please.
Yes, you mentioned all those, and those are actually the different range on the manifestations of grief. You see, a lot of people think grief are just when you feel sad. But even when you lost a loved one, many times the sadness come with all other manifestations. Many times the sadness come with anger or guilt or both, or depression is a very common thing. So prolonged, we have study after studies showing how when grief be unresolved or it's very severe, it causes depressions. And to the extreme of that, the grief, every emotions you feel, every emotion you feel anything impacted you strong enough psychologically, it changed your physiologic as well. This is just a completely different example, but I invite you as you listen to this to imagine that you are with me, and this is back in the day before we all have to wear masks, and when we still have those samples in the grocery store. Now let's say you ran into me, we go in a grocery store and we saw a sample. It's a fruit season and you saw a tray of lemon, juicy, yummy, fresh smelling lemon, and you get a piece and you take a bite into that lemon and it is very tart. How are you feeling right now? If you're really following this experiment, your mouth probably water, or you feel like kind of like that, and you might even have a little bit physical response to that just now. Why? Because every emotions, everything in our body is connected. So the same thing when grief takes place, when grief occurred, the impact to you gets into your physiological, in addition to emotional, it gets into your physiological and physical as well, and depend on the impact of that. We know this in people, we know this in animal. During my day of veterinarian oncologist or veterinarian in emergency clinic as well, we see that you've heard about this many times. People so-called die from heartbreak, and it really, really happened. Where one person passed away, whether it's a child or usually a long-term companion, where the connection is so much, and the persons become so impacted by and they just literally wither away and passed away. It's sometimes a lot of time within weeks.
Dr. Pickett, thank you, Dr. Pickett. I like it when you talk about the connection of when a loved one dies and somebody dies with them, because I have seen it myself. I have seen it with my family as well. My grandmother's sister, her son, basically the firstborn, my grandmother's older sister, her son was her firstborn, and she loved her very much. My family were very, very close. So her son passed away suddenly. And the minute she received the news, when everyone in the family were told, she just went to sleep. That was it, because of the shock that she died. Basically, they buried her and her son, which was very painful in my family. And I've seen quite a few people as well in other families as well that happened what you are talking about, because of the connection. When somebody is connected with somebody deeply in their heart, and when you love somebody and they just go, sometimes it can feel despair. It can feel like your life has been stripped away from you. It can feel like everything that you have ever lived for is gone. That's when your faith will need to come in, your beliefs will need to come in. But if you are somebody who is not strong enough, like myself before, I wasn't strong enough for me to actually accept. When I lost my father, it took me a long time. And when I lost my stepdad, I lost my parents, basically my stepdad and my stepmom and my dad. And those were the people that I was very, very close to. And the shock, it took me a very, very long time to actually accept that they're gone. I was in denial, basically. I used to get up in the morning, check my phone every day, hoping that I will hear the news that it was a mistake. And when they were buried, basically I was in denial. Even if talking about it, it was something that I didn't want to talk about it. Uh, Avoiding families, avoiding people to talk about the situation. But then it took a long time. It was just one day when I just decided that I need to deal with it. Then I dealt with it. But it took a long time. No matter how much people would talk about would talk about my dad. You know, when you come from a family that cares, sometimes people would talk about my dad. I would just feel like they're trying to replace my father, even if they were trying to help. And I knew deep down in my heart that they were trying to help. But at the same time, it felt like because of the connection that I had with my dad, it felt like they are actually trying to replace the feelings that I had with my father. And it took me a long time basically to accept it, that he is gone, and the love that the other people that are giving me, for me to accept it. It took a long time. Although my mom, she's still alive, but just seeing my mom, that connection that I had with both of them was gone. So, and to carry on, for 1 year, it was tough. 1 year, because I remember I lost my stepdad in 2002, 2004, and then I tried to accept his death. 1 year later, my daddy died, and it was too much. So basically, here is me dealing with the two people that I actually loved, and it was really, really too much. The feeling of carrying it on, it was too much. It even affected my relationship as well with my romantic relationship. So I don't know with the other people, like as a grief coach, if somebody, how do you actually, let me look at the questions that I put there so we can work on. Um, how can you make sure that the grief does not affect you mentally? Kind
So
of,
how do you make sure the grief does not affect you mentally?
yes.
So, by definitions, grief is something that affecting you. Grief is something that comes up because you have been affected mentally. So, grief, by definitions, is the unsettling feelings, which is
Yeah.
a mental thing, caused by hope unmet or a change in your familiar routine. So, grief comes up from something affecting you mentally, whether it's a physical thing affecting you mentally. Say you walk on the street, fell down, and got a broke both of your legs. Physical thing affecting you mentally, or an event outside your life, in your life, something like that that affect you mentally. So you are affected mentally. I think what you might be asking, or what we will be able to do once that happen, is such that it doesn't affect you worse. Now, how can we not let it affect us worse? I would say the one is to have the best way, literally the best way, is to have the tools and the awareness. To have the tools and the awareness, because a lot of people are have there are a lot of myth in this world about grief and feelings and losses, so much so that most people don't know, but there has been a grief pandemic before the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the best way to such that it's not worse is that we are able to thrive, not just survive after something happened, is to actually be prepared. It's kind of a little bit like earthquake. When grief happen in your life, it's a little bit like an earthquake. I live in California here, where earthquake is a rather common occurrence, unfortunately. And you have things we are taught here. We have things like earthquake preparedness in the community. Kids in school are taught earthquake preparedness. Why? Because, well, it's much better. Not that it's good to have an earthquake, but it's much better to have an earthquake and you have food and water. Or in here also in California, right where I live, in addition to earthquake, we seems to attract wildfires. If you hear all those magnificent California wildfire, I live right in the fire corridor. And so we were taught how to prepare for that. Have all your document this way and have this, and the electricity love to turn off in a magnificent random manner. And so a lot of people has, like I do, power bank in the house. And so you have a preparedness before things happen. Now, unfortunately, in the strangest way, living this life, it is not when things gonna happen in your life. It is not if things going to happen in your life, it's when. But people, we don't have grief education in the community, in school, in college, unless you happen to learn psychology. And even a lot of psychologists actually do not have a specific grief education, so much so that they go to the Grief Recovery Institute to become educated more. So the best way is to have the tools. And how do you get the tools? Through reliable resource. There is always Dr. Google, which has a lot of different things, but a lot of them are actually incorrect informations. You can go to the Grief Recovery Institute. There, the book Grief Recovery Handbook is the only grief resolution system, grief recovery system that has been proven through studies. So there's a lot of system out there. This one actually has been proven through studies in university. You can also get my book, Seeking Peace. I can put in the link for this later. The book, Seeking Peace, The Proven Five Fingers Method to Thrive Through Change Effortlessly. This book is a little easier for many people to read because all the lessons are in story form. I think you've read this book, Numsa. Everything is in story form, all the major lesson in stories, such that you don't fall asleep reading them if you were like me in any manner. So that, but to have, and if it is already happened, to reach out as soon as you possibly can make yourself do that, to reach out to people, to reach out. There are a lot of grief recovery people in the UK, and I work in remotely. I work remotely and globally. So feel free to reach out to me as well. At any time, I provide complimentary consultations. But even things such that, a lot of people still think that crying is something to be shameful. Crying is really good for you. We have many medical studies showing that when things happen, for you to cry or scream is actually very good for you emotionally and physically.
So, Dr. B is so true. Crying, for me, basically, I love to cry. When I have problems, when I cry, I just let it all out. Uh, but when I receive news about somebody that I love, somebody that I'm close to or connected to, I actually get a shock. Normally, because I'm not prepared for it, and I get a shock, and then I go to in denial, waiting for somebody to tell me that it was a mistake. And after that, when I get a shock, then is when I start crying. I not after straight away. It takes me a few days to actually accept that whoever has died has died, and I will start crying. When I start crying, that means that I'm accepting and I'm releasing that person. I'm letting them go. And once I let them go, that's when I just have to hand it over to God. I have to pray. Before, I used to hold on to pain, but now I've learned to do the healing, self healing, where I just have to release that person and just let it go. And it does help me. And when you talk about the tools as well and the awareness, it's actually very, very important to have the tools. I talk about this all the time when I talk about relationships, that if you don't have the tools or for how to deal with things, it's going to be difficult for you to actually deal with the other things. So the tools and awareness of grief, even though myself, I'm not a grief coach, but I have given myself to actually understand more, like I use prayer and scriptures mostly for healing and releasing that person, basically having an understanding of how uh, the spirit works. Because when somebody dies, their spirit goes to heaven. But if you hold on, I actually, I think that was a few months ago when I was reading about, basically, I wanted to find out how the spirits works, and apparently there is a queen. I don't know what, I've forgotten her name. She's a Nigerian queen that deals with the death. Basically, when somebody dies, if the family basically don't deal with that grief properly, or if that person before God, before they go to heaven, if that person that is died has not finished, has unfinished business on earth, their soul can be held, so that the family and that person they deal with whatever is going on before that person goes to heaven. But if they don't deal with it, that means they'll be trapped on earth. Their soul will be trapped on earth. So I was like, I am no longer holding anyone in my family or my friends that dies. I have to release them, because that means I'm holding them. So I was just understanding how basically you can heal yourself, and what does it mean when somebody dies? Does it mean they are gone forever? So I just realized that actually when somebody dies, you have to release their soul for them to go and rest in peace. Because if I'm holding them and with anger, I'm holding that person for them to leave the earth, because they need to go to heaven for their soul to be rested in peace. So I'll be putting that person to hell because I'm holding them captivity, and they want to go. But if they feel that they're not being released, they'll feel that they have unfinished business. So it's very, very important, and to look after your mental health problems and deal with it, because like Dr. Bickett, you said before, that when you receive the news of death, basically mentally it affects you. So mentally you have to be able to deal with the problems, which that's where the professionals comes in. And you have to go through the process. The process of healing, basically for me, the process of healing was like, I had each day, every day was different. It was different. Sometimes I have bad days, sometimes I have good days, until I actually released whoever I was upset about, whoever was. Because when somebody dies, you get angry. Why, God? Why did you take them away? If God is meant to be a God who loves people, why taking them away? But sometimes it cannot be God is doing, it can be Satan is doing. So you have to understand all that, how it works, and just release the person for them to have a rest and accept, which is grief acceptance is tough. It's a process that you yourself, I basically, when I was going through problems, I think I went to three or four psychologists. They were talking to me, but not talking to me. You know, when your mind is there, but it's not there, like somebody is trying to help you, but you're not there. It was when I decided actually to accept the situation, and with the last psychologist that I was working with, which made me actually be wanting to go into psychology. And that's when I actually decided that I'm going to take psychology, because it was a very fascinating journey with the people trying to help me. And I remember they used to talk about it. We talk about things, and I was like, I've had a good childhood, I've had this, but why do I feel this way? And basically is emotional, is the process that is acceptance. So then it was then when I had to accept the grief and release it and let it go, that everything fall into places. So I don't know with your patients, what experience have you had with your patients? Like you mentioned about psychology. Uh, I didn't study grief in psychology. So you just get to study something similar, but the grief is deep. It's something that specific that you have to study.
Yeah, grief is it's almost like you already noticed. There is a whole, whether it is in psychology or in medicine. In medicine, you have people who specialize in on say when I was in medicine, I was in oncology, which is cancer, which relates to grief. And and we had to know anybody who hear the news of cancer and said, yes, I'm so happy. That doesn't happen. And then the same thing in psychology. You can specialize in children and in grief. And the other thing that you mentioned that you touch is actually is very true. The end the end of the journey of moving through grief. Many people say, "Oh, get over, move on," or something like that. Have you ever hear somebody says this? Oh, it's okay. You can move on, and there is nothing more offensive to somebody who are grieving to hear move on. And while I'm saying, and a lot of time it's only make them angry. And actually, there are a lot of things that you say to somebody who are grieving that in normal situation is fine or even good to do. And these are all well things you typically say with a very well meaning and things such that, oh, I know how you feel because I have such and such loss. That is in very consistent basis may almost make every griever shut down. In other words, they just kind of like, but why? Because everybody different. If you look at your fingerprints, even between your fingerprints different. We're all different. Our, like you say, Numsa, your feelings moment to moment's different. And so nobody exactly know how anybody feel. And so that's one thing that, and then for some people, it's really good for them to hear, oh, he's with God now. But if you don't know the person very well, if you don't know the person very well at the moment, and I am emphasizing here at the moment, then it's a very dangerous thing to say. Why? I have known many people who are a very strong believer, and something really major happened, like a loss of a loved one, a loss of a child, even a loss of a job, and they turn, even if it's just temporary at that moment, they turn to everything and everybody in their life, including to God. There might be somebody who is very active in church and a strong believer. If something happened, they're like, you know what, apparently this is whatever going on in their mind, they actually become repulsed by it. Sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, Numsa, even your relations with your family member and other loved ones, partly because a lot of time it subconsciously might remind them to the person whom they lost. We share this in Seeking Peace with somebody who lost her unborn child. She started resenting her other child because that child remind her to the one that the she lost unborn. And it's not because anybody is a bad person. It's not because, oh, now you are a sinner or something. If that's your belief, it's a matter of the shock reaction. So you want to be really really careful in what you say. And I actually have it in on my website. When you go to my website, under resource, you easily find uh, some when you go to my website, there is something called gift. Receive your gift here, and as a gift to you for listening to this, if you want to learn what to say and not say when you are facing somebody who are grieving or even to yourself, then just click on that sign where it says get your gift here on the home page, and you will be able to download these tips of it's 9 no's and 3 yeses on what you can say to someone who are grieving. And as you hear just now, the other thing that's very common people do is when they see someone who are grieving, they say, "How you doing? Hey, how you doing? How are you? How are you?" And for a griever, for somebody, I mean, it's a friendly thing, and you might be thinking, you might be without thinking, says you care about this person. You know somebody just passed away, so you want to know how they are doing, and you're like, in the best intentions, how you doing? And that is typically dismissive or confusing to someone who are grieving, because they'll be like, didn't you know just somebody just died? What were you like pretending or something? And it's a matter of something very slight, and this is in that article that I have as a gift for you. You simply add on, how are you doing at this moment? How are you doing this afternoon? Then it goes from you are dismissive or something to you actually very caring, because then the person say, oh, okay, you know I have a loss and you care enough to want to know how I'm doing, how I'm handling it, and how I'm this moment. And you see the huge difference, and it goes from what you said, Numsa, with people. If you are interacting with people that don't know, you might be like actually more appalled by them and start retrieving instead of feeling help, even though you know deep in your heart they're trying to help, but your mind is like, I can't take this. I can't take this family member, these friends, even this psychologist.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Dr. Bigot, when you talk about even the believers, when they believe, like they believe the Christians, when they believe they turn on everything when somebody dies in their family. I believe that because my friend, her son was shot. That was last year, and it took me a few months to actually get through to her, trying to ring her basically to talk about her to see if she's okay. She wasn't answering people's phone calls. And then one day she just decided to call me. I returned her call and asking her how she gets on, because I know her as someone who is very strong, and I know her as a Christian, basically somebody who taught me to actually to be a fighter when it comes to life. And she basically stopped everything, not going to church anymore, does not talk about God anymore, does not read the Bible anymore, because when she lost her son was killed. So she felt like, I think, the disappointment that why basically blaming on God and blaming on everything. But then when I spoke to her, I said to her, because I understand that everything you do is a process, and I can't say to her, I know how you're feeling, because I don't. So I was like, maybe one day just try to go back to God so he can guide you through and hold your hand, because it's not his doing. God would not want somebody to enter your house and actually kill your son. He wouldn't want to punish you like that. So I said to her, just when you have time, just because I know her as somebody who is strong and somebody who basically would do anything for anyone, who is always out there helping people. She works for she helps people through charities and stuff, and she has her own job. So I was like, basically, you need to go back to God, and then everything else will fall into place. Um, so she went into that now, but I think she actually needs professional help. So I actually asked her if the kids are getting professional help. She said they refused, which is, it does affect basically when somebody, when you lose someone, basically suddenly. And then there was another woman, I think her son was killed here in UK. I watched her on the news saying, I forgive the people when the justice was served. She was like, it doesn't matter whether these people have been sentenced, but what matters is how I feel. I have to forgive my son's killers. And the reason why she did that, she was like, because I believe in God. She hold on. Some people, there's quite a few that people hold on to God. And for me, basically, to have that attitude, it requires tools and like what you were talking about it before, you have to have tools, you have to have the knowledge of dealing and the awareness and the knowledge of how to deal with that grief, because grief is not all about losing someone. Grief could be when you're going through something or losing a job or anything like that. You just have to have the tools and the awareness and having faith as well. It comes with it. It doesn't matter whatever your beliefs are. If you believe that, if you use your faith, you use your actually your everybody has something that they believe in. If you use whatever you believe in to hold on to it, it does help. But when problems happens, we forget all the good things that we had in life, and it's basically it's life, because the mind shuts down, so you forget every good thing that you have ever had or the good times you've had with that person, and you start remembering that event, basically that you've just been told that you have lost your loved ones. And to hold on to memories, it's just going to take years for you to actually go back, because it's like something is like hitting you and it's a shock, and you need somebody to get you out of that shock, or you need to get yourself out of that shock. So it can be really, really tough. And and the feelings can be different as well. Like you were saying that you can turn against, like you were talking about the woman that turned against her child. So it can be really difficult. I've seen people on the news, like they turn against their husband. When they lose a child, they turn against so many things. But like for me now with my faith, I know that whatever happens in life, when I lose something, it's not anybody's fault. There are challenges in life. It's something that an event that I have to face at that moment, and how you pull through it is how you are able to live your life. And forgiveness as well. You have to forgive and
Yeah.
forgiving God, because we believe that God loves unconditional. God will never take your loved ones away from us. So we just have to forgive God.
Yeah, definitely. We want to reach the state of where we are able to accept things and forgive. And a lot of times people misunderstood what forgiving really is the
Yeah,
main thing. Actually, a lot of people think that forgiving is agreeing or approving, and there are certain things in this life that we will never agree nor approve. Somebody who are drunk driving and end up killing people is not one that anybody would be approving. And at the same time, most people and then the other part of it is, and also people, this is we share in seeking peace, that people, many people still thinks that, oh, if I move on, if I stop grieving, that means I no longer care. It is the exact opposite of that. Let me repeat that. Many times people say, "Oh, if my significant other passed away and I remarry, that means I no longer love that person." And that if the person die and I don't grieve, I don't care. That is not the case. It's actually in those scenario, if you move forward, that is an expression of your love and respect and honor to the person who has passed on. Why? Because if you think about this, if you love someone, would you want that person to be happy and thriving and doing well in life? You would. Your
Yep.
loved one, that your loved one who's no longer here physically, depend on your belief at least, also the same way. That person want you to be happy and thriving and live a joyful life. And so if you sitting here and feeling guilty and berating yourself or punishing yourself in one way or another, simmering in anger or anything that but thriving and living a joyful life, then you're not thriving, then you're miserable. And that if the person is actually still here physically with you, that would break that person's heart, I'd imagine. I mean, if you are a mother and your kid is, miserable every day and depressed, someone in a mood swing and unable to function, would that break your heart? Chances it would make you sad. So if you don't want your loved one who has moved passed on to so to say be sad, if you want to honor that person as a respect, as an expression, it's actually for you to thrive again, to move forward. Now that's a lot easier said than done in some scenario, and that's very true. We all have different time and different. You mentioned about denial. That's one thing that people go through. Everybody has different timing in processing thing. Now, receiving the correct help is as if you have a broken leg, right? If you got a broken leg and then you try and you're not a doctor, or even if you are a doctor and you are not a orthopedic surgeon and you try to fix it, chances it's gonna take a lot longer to take care of things. This has been shown many times. There is a reason we refer to specialists. You have a broken leg and somebody who's not an orthopedic surgeon is trying to do surgery. Not only it take them multiple times longer, so let's say instead of 2 hours it take them 6 hours, the result is much poorer. Usually complications happen. Hello. So the same thing with broken heart. If you want to allow support, and even so, even with support, if somebody breaks something, some people heal in 4 weeks, some people take 8 weeks. So everybody's different. But you want to allow that, and then and help have an understanding back to forgiveness. That is usually a stage that's great to be able to reach and be in. There are steps for you to reach to that place, which will take us about a whole day of seminar to talk about. But just in the in just to have an understanding about forgiveness, though, forgiveness is simply letting go of your guilt or grudge about yourself or others on something that had already happened in the past. And now there are things in your life that's still going on that you might want to forgive. And forgiveness also is simply letting go of your imprisoning wish that things happen differently. And like Numsa says, if it is allowing you to be able to move forward, so you're no longer trapped by whatever that happened. And sometimes it's not a loss of a loved one. Sometimes it's a betrayer, or it's a loss of a loved one in a traumatic way because of, say, a drunk driver or a random shooting or something. In those scenario, it's actually even more important for you to receive help, to allow forgiveness and peace of mind, and allowing you to be able to thrive again as an honor and expression of love to your loved ones.
Yeah, that is so true, Dr. Bigger. I actually agree with you. Forgiveness is very, very important. I've heard people saying, "You want me to forgive," I would never forgive. And what they don't understand is when you are going to go into pain, basically you're making yourself sick. You have to just let it go. And when you forgive yourself and forgive and letting everything go, you're releasing yourself basically from all these chains that are holding you. Because when you lose someone, it comes with chain. It comes in chains of broken heart, chains of anger, chains of a life that has been stripped away. The memories, the good memories, the bad memories that is rightful yours. And those memories, it feels like it's been stripped away because that person is they are no longer uh, exist anymore. So then it will be up to you to actually let that person go and ask for forgiveness, just to let them go, and allow support as well. Because when you allow people to support you, that means it's a pathway of recovery. Because when it basically when things go wrong in your life, you need to recover, you need to healing. And that's why some people go to a shutdown thing, basically that where they shut down and they don't want to talk about it. Like my friend, I've known my friend for a very, very long time. She is very, very close to her mom. I've known her with someone who is very, very close to her mom. But when her mom passed away, basically the moment she passed away, she basically there was a blame. Like she was like blaming her, and for me, because I know I wouldn't allow her to actually continue with the blame, I was like, maybe you need to focus on what is really going on, because I knew that she's somebody who loved her mom and her mom loved her, and they're very, very close. And which I did that with my dad as well. When my dad died, my mind started googling things, like things that went wrong and those things didn't exist. So I knew exactly what she was doing. So, and then I was like, I'm not going to tell her what to do. I'm just going to be there, but I'm not going to agree with her statement because the statement is wrong. That's not the person that I know. And then a few months later, she came back, and because the process of healing was taking place, she was in a good place, talking about positive things and really moving forward with her life. And I was like, wow. And she had doing all the healing and reading the Bible, reading the scriptures, and just basically healing herself. And I was really, really touched with what she was doing. But then when it comes to thought, you have to have the skills to see whether whatever your thoughts are, whatever is going on with regards to your thoughts, is it the fact, or and then you try to manage those distractions that are coming in through your thoughts, if they're distracting you with your healing, because there's going to be blame, there's going to be this when you're going through grief. So you have to, which is called, is a cognitive behavior, where you have to be aware of what is going on. So you have to stay alert. And it is a process. And like you talk about people, they say get over it. For me, basically, I listen to somebody, and it is nice to listen to somebody, not being able to tell them what to do. And if you hear them, I tend not to agree with a negative statement. When somebody is going through pain, I don't agree with their negative statement. Or even if they are upset with their spouse, they come to me, they're letting it all out. I intend not to agree with them, because what happens is when you agree with somebody and they go and forgive their spouse, and then you find yourself being the one now that is grieving. So I tend to be like, I hear you, but I want to hear you next time again. I want to see this, what you're telling me, whether it's real or the evidence that you're telling me. I want to hear them next time. So I'm like, in my heart, I'll be saying that in my heart, but I'm like, in person. I'll be like, I hear you. And if you need anything, I'm here for you. But I try not to agree with the statement, because if you agree with somebody being negative, you want them to stay there. So all I do is give them love and let them know that I'm always going to be here. If they want to talk more, they want to say more, I'm here to listen. But I don't have advice to give it to them unless if it's been asked. Or if somebody says, what do I do if when I'm feeling like this? That's when I give advice. But if somebody is basically going quick with the emotions, I intend not to give advice. I intend to listen and give hugs and love, and that would be it. And I find that when you do that, people always come back because they know that you're not going to tell them what they need to do. They know that they're just going to be themselves and scream and shout.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Dr. Biget, anything else before we leave?
Yeah, just to remember that I would say when it comes to feelings to grief, to remember that everybody is different, and to if it is something that you are going through, I would people always say, so what happened if somebody just going through something? There was a different coach who was asking me the other day, and it's like I'm working with these people, and they are I cannot make them to become positive, because it is a positivity, life, what have you. It's like, oh my god, they don't want to hear about there is a seed of good in every adversity. They're just so angry. I'm like, well, because it's not time yet.
Yeah,
The first thing you want to do is just let it be. In
just
this
timing.
in Seeking Peace, it says the first things is allow. Just allow and honor, not even just allow, but honor your grief. Why do you want to honor it? Because it's like everything in life. If you honor something, you usually respond to it instead of trying to just kind of push it away. You cannot push away grief, but everybody feel things differently, process things differently. So just honor it, honor your feeling, honor yourself, and allow it. And if this is something that happened with other people, and we're talking about the traumatizing thing, everything that's happened can traumatize us. Everything that we hear can traumatize us further, whether you are experiencing it or something. I was speaking with somebody recently who has a child, and it is a very touchy thing. So she did very common a very common thing that people do, and say, well, such and such is sick, and so now such and such die. Instead of explaining the what is to try to explain to the child what death is, and that the person just said it's the person just died, they just say, well, the person's sick, so will no longer be here with us forever. And then she discovered in in the most interesting way, when she got a flu a couple years later, that poor child was so horrified and traumatized. Because why? Well, daddy's sick now, and our mommy's sick now, and that means you're going to disappear after this. And what a lesson. And so, and the same thing with adult in seeking, sometimes your intentions to help, and it's actually make people feel guilty. So I would say to honor yourself or honor the persons, knowing that everybody different. And just like it, to me, grief really is no different than, say, if your broken heart, it not being dismissive, but in a way it is as if you got a broken leg. What would you do if you got a broken leg? Would you go sit on a sofa and do nothing? Would you go to your neighbor and ask for them to fix your leg? Hopefully not. The same thing with grief. Get it taken care as soon as you can, and you'll be able to heal and move forward in a much better way, and actually a whole lot easier and faster, and at the end of the day cheaper too, because grief actually has this invisible cost on you, your work, your family, that surmount to $117 billion in the US alone, in the workplace alone, before the pandemic. So don't be a part of it. So just allow yourself and ask for help.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bigot. I agree with you. For me, basically, for what you just said, I'm just going to live with timing. Everything has timing. Like what Dr. Bigot said, don't compare yourself with anybody else. Why do I feel this way? Why other people just get on with it? You don't know whether they're dealing with things or they're not. Basically, like if you find somebody like me, I'm happy to express my feelings, how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling really bad, I'm not ashamed to say I don't feel too good because of this, because of this. So everything is timing. When you're grieving, it's timing. Just it takes time, but don't let it take forever, because otherwise it can actually cause illness if it goes on forever. And we are here Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. UK time. And Dr. Bigot has a book that she's written, Seeking Peace. And there's another one that came out, Dr. Bigot. What is it called?
Yeah, it is called, and I'm going to get to the book in one moment, but I almost forgot to mention, when you have a loss, the holiday time's supposed to be jolly, but sometimes it's actually even more painful, because now you used to be doing this and the memory come back and everything. And for that reason, I have a public event next week on Thursday next week, actually, which is December 9. And it is something that actually it's holiday grief. How can you help yourself or your loved one move through the holiday when the feelings comes up, when you feel more lost, particularly with everything going on in your life. You might perhaps used to go to dinner together in a large group, and now you might not be able to go with the same people. But here in Los Angeles, that's for sure. But there, if you because of all the new regulation, restriction, and everything. So we're going to talk about holiday grief Thursday next week on the on the 9, and I'll send you the link. But talking about the book, yes, the book is called Joy. It's a gratitude book. We know that gratitude is beneficial for children. It helped them heal. It helped them have better grades and help them success, as well as adult physically and emotionally. And so it is joyful you 52.3 weeks. So it is this little book here. It's actually will be good for you for a whole year. Perfect for gift for now, that will keep on giving next year, whether for yourself or your loved ones. And it's a gratitude and inspirations journal. It is available on Amazon in any country. I will put the link for Amazon UK. It's available in Canada, in the US. It's a gratitude book, and 100% of the profit of this book, as well as my other book, all my books, Seeking Peace, all of these are donated to the International Childhood Cancer Charity, where we help empower, in addition to emotionally and physically heal impoverished children with cancer globally. So give yourself and your loved ones a gift of healing, a gift of preparedness with Seeking Peace, and give a gift that keep on giving the whole year. And the book also come with inspiration. So every page here has an inspirations. Week 36, the inspirational message says, "You are beautiful, just as you are, and know this: you really are. You really are beautiful as you are, regardless of how you're feeling right now, and that you deserve to thrive, even as you face changes and adversities."
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bigot. We'll see you everyone tomorrow. Live with grace, everyone. Remember, if you are grieving, contact Dr. Bigot through our page and get in touch with her and work with her. God bless you, everyone. Bye.